12-year-old Sophia came home from school earlier than expected because her drawing class was cancelled. Pushing open the door, she immediately noticed the raised voices of her father, Kevin, and his girlfriend, Jessica, coming from the living room. "Kevin, please reconsider. Sending her to a boarding school isn't a solution. She's just a child. Yes, she can be difficult at times, but remember, she's only 12 and she's still grieving her mother," Jessica pleaded. Kevin's voice, heavy with weariness and sorrow, replied, "Jessica, we've done everything we can, right? Yet nothing seems to work with her. Maybe a year at boarding school might help her learn discipline and respect, which we can't seem to instill in her." Hearing this, Sophia felt a sudden wave of dizziness, a sensation she'd been experiencing often. Still, she remained hidden, wanting to hear more. "How can you even think of such a thing, Kevin? She's your daughter," Jessica exclaimed with increasing frustration. The conversation revealed that Jessica and Kevin were debating whether to send Sophia to a boarding school. Kevin believed that it might help Sophia learn better behavior and respect. Ever since Jessica had become a part of their lives, Sophia had been resistant, even resentful, not wanting anything to do with her. It had been over 5 years since the sad departure of Kevin's wife, Ellie. Sophia was still struggling to come to terms with her mother's absence and the presence of Jessica in their lives. Rewinding to 10 years ago, Kevin's life was quite different. He was hustling, working at a friend's restaurant, waiting tables during the day, and attending evening classes. His father had always taught him to strive for 2 things in life: building a successful business and nurturing a loving family. Kevin was a determined man, always pushing forward to achieve his dreams. One day at the gym, while he was adjusting the weights on his machine, he noticed Ellie looking confused with a leg press. Seizing the chance to help, he walked over, flashing a warm smile. "Need some assistance with that?" he offered. Caught off guard but appreciative, Ellie responded, "Yes, thank you. I'm not familiar with this one." Graciously, Kevin guided her through the setup and proper usage. From that simple interaction, they struck up a conversation that flowed naturally. Ellie, a kind-hearted woman with strong values, had been in a relationship with Sean, but things didn't last, and after daughter Sophia was born, Sean left. Ellie found herself solely responsible for their young daughter. Being an attractive person, Ellie was used to getting attention, but whenever she mentioned her past marriage and her daughter, many men would lose interest. Kevin, however, was different. "The fact that you have a daughter doesn't change how I feel about you," he told Ellie when she shared her story. Deep inside, Kevin felt it was a significant detail, but he chose not to voice that concern in front of Ellie. Kevin took his time pondering the implications. Having never been in a serious relationship before, this was new territory for him. His mother had always taught him to emphasize and to see things from others' perspectives, so he reflected on Ellie's situation. If he were raising a child alone, how would he want someone to view him? He chose understanding and compassion. Kevin appreciated Ellie's honesty about her past. It showed him that she valued transparency, which only deepened his admiration for her. Their initial encounters at the gym transformed into delightful coffee dates. The more they spent time together, the more they found shared interests, like their mutual love for outdoor adventures and an undeniable appreciation for Italian food. What puzzled Kevin, though, was Ellie's silence about her daughter Sophia. Despite being a mother, Ellie never mentioned Sophia during their dates. She didn't reschedule or prioritize her daughter over their time together. Having grown up in a large family, Kevin was familiar with the demands of raising kids. Gathering his courage one day, he asked Ellie why Sophia never came up in their conversations. "Because you never asked?" she answered simply, catching Kevin by surprise, his face turning a shade of pink. Noticing his discomfort, Ellie smiled warmly, adding, "It's okay, Kevin. I sensed your hesitation a while back. Understand this, I'm not only searching for a potential husband. If you just want to enjoy our time together without involving Sophia, that's fine. We can keep things uncomplicated." Kevin was taken aback by her candidness, not having anticipated such an open response. Feeling reassured, he surprised her by asking to meet Sophia on their upcoming date. Fast forward a month, and the trio, Kevin, Ellie, and little Sophia, were inseparable. Their weekends were filled with sunlit picnics, visits to art galleries, and even some playful dance lessons. Kevin and Ellie quickly realized that their connection was deepening into something more significant than just friendship. The more time they spent together, the clearer it became that they shared a special bond. One evening, as they dined at their go-to Italian restaurant, Kevin took a deep breath and ventured, "Do you ever think about us as, well, more than just friends?" Ellie, her eyes shining with mischief, answered, "Every day since we first met." While Kevin's parents were understanding of his choices, believing he was mature enough to make his own decisions, not everyone shared their confidence. Some friends and family members expressed their doubts about his relationship with Ellie. Uncle Dave and Aunt Jasmine were particularly vocal. Both had previously been in relationships with partners who had children and had faced challenges. Aunt Jasmine warned Kevin, "Be cautious. Children who aren't biologically yours can sometimes hold that against you. What will you do if she grows up and throws that in your face?" Uncle Dave was even more direct. He cornered Kevin one day and said, "Think twice before you dive deep into this, Kevin. Being with a woman who has a child can complicate things. When issues arise, disciplining the child isn't always straightforward. You're committing not just to Ellie, but also to her daughter. Do you truly understand what that entails?" Kevin was taken aback by the intensity of their feelings, but he knew he had to trust his judgment and feelings for Ellie and Sophia. Despite the doubters and naysayers, the trio shared a harmonious life for the next year. Kevin's affection for young Sophia grew daily, and she quickly found a special place in his heart. Tired of the constant negative comments from others, Kevin made the bold decision to move his little family to a different town for a fresh start. A year later, he and Ellie exchanged vows, with the adorable 3-year-old Sophia proudly taking on the role of ring bearer. Kevin had always envisioned that he'd find his one true love, someone he'd spend his entire life with, and on his wedding day, he was confident that he had found her in Ellie. Yet life had its own twists and turns in store for them. The years following their wedding were prosperous for the family. Ellie was a pillar of support for Kevin, always there to uplift him during his business endeavors. After facing a few setbacks, Kevin eventually established a small construction firm that, to his delight, rapidly expanded. The couple had initially decided to keep the truth about Sophia's biological father a secret until she was old enough to understand. This was their agreement for the time being. Over the next 5 years, their lives were filled with joy and success. Kevin's business flourished, becoming a renowned name in the industry. With their lives on a steady course, Kevin and Ellie began contemplating expanding their family. One evening, after they'd settled down from a warm family dinner, Ellie looked at Kevin with awareness in her eyes. "Kevin," she began, hesitating for a moment, "I've been feeling so drained recently. It's not just everyday fatigue. It's something more." Kevin, noticing the worry in her voice, gently took her hand. "What do you mean? Is everything okay?" Ellie had been deeply involved in Kevin's business lately, preparing to take the reins of the marketing department. "I thought it was just the stress of work, but it's different. I've been waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, burning up with fever. And now, even a simple cold seems to linger and knock me down. This isn't like me." Concerned, Kevin urged her to see a doctor. "Let's not take any chances. Let's see someone about this." At the hospital, the initial tests were inconclusive. Doctors ran a gamut of examinations, but couldn't immediately pinpoint the issue. The waiting was agonizing. It felt like an eternity before they had an answer. Finally, a somber-faced doctor approached them. "I'm afraid I have some difficult news," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Ellie, you have been diagnosed with lymphoblastic leukemia." Both Ellie and Kevin were stunned into silence, trying to process the weight of what they just heard. Kevin squeezed Ellie's hand tightly, searching for words of comfort. "We'll face this together, every step of the way. You are not alone." The diagnosis felt like a heavy weight on Kevin's shoulders. After numerous consultations and examinations, the doctors concluded that chemotherapy was the only viable option to treat Ellie's condition. The treatment sapped Ellie's strength, leaving her frail. For the subsequent 2 years, Kevin found himself juggling between the responsibilities of his business and supporting Ellie at home. Recognizing the toll the treatment took on her, Ellie made the heart-wrenching decision to step back from work and focus on spending quality time with Sophia. One evening, as Ellie was tucking Sophia into bed, the young girl, sensing the change in her mother's energy, asked, "Mommy, why are you home all the time now? Why aren't you going to work with Daddy?" Ellie, taking a moment to gather her thoughts, replied gently, "Sweetie, Mommy isn't feeling too well lately, so I'm taking a break from work to spend more time with you." Sophia's innocent eyes widened. "You're not feeling good? Like when I had the flu?" Ellie nodded, giving her daughter a soft smile. "Yes, something like that. But don't worry, darling. Daddy and I are doing everything we can to make me feel better." As days turned into weeks, Kevin's optimism waned. Ellie's once vibrant demeanor had faded. She became gaunt and her energy levels plummeted. Most days, she remained confined to her bed, with the strength of her voice diminishing. On a rare day when she felt slightly better, Ellie beckoned Kevin to sit beside her. With considerable effort and in a feeble voice, she said, "Kevin, if something happens to me, promise me you'll look after Sophia. She'll need a caring mother's touch." The sheer weight of her words and the reality of their situation hit Kevin hard. He had been trying to stay strong, holding back his emotions for so long, but hearing Ellie's plea broke him. Tears welled up in his eyes, streaming down his face as he whispered back, "I promise, Ellie. I promise." After Ellie's passing, Sophia seemed to accept the loss with a surprising level of calmness. Perhaps the preceding months, seeing her mother weakened and bedridden, had prepared her in some way. Ellie had gently explained to Sophia in the past, telling her that sometimes God calls good people to be with him, and that one day she might be one of those people. However, Sophia's initial composed demeanor was short-lived. 3 days after Ellie's departure, the dam of emotions burst. Sophia, who had held herself together, was suddenly overwhelmed with the reality of her mother's absence. She cried uncontrollably, the weight of her loss fully sinking in. The house that Kevin and Sophia shared was filled with memories of Ellie, from her clothes hanging in the wardrobe to her favorite books on the shelf and the pictures of her radiant smile that adorned the walls. In the weeks that followed her passing, Kevin was consumed by grief. However, he understood the importance of moving forward, especially for Sophia's sake. He found solace in his work, and as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the pain started to fade. Children, with their resilient nature, tend to adapt quickly. A year later, it seemed as if Sophia had bounced back, living her life as if the tragedy had never occurred. But Kevin knew that the memories of her mother were safely tucked away in her heart. Kevin's business flourished, and as it grew, so did Sophia. With the expansion of his business, Kevin began collaborating with more partners and companies. During a work meeting, he was introduced to Jessica, a sharp and captivating manager representing one of their partner companies. Their professional discussions soon ventured into personal chats. Before long, they were seeing each other outside of work. Feeling the growing bond between them, Kevin felt it was essential for Jessica to know about his past. He opened up about being a widower and having a 12-year-old daughter. Her response, "It doesn't really change anything for me," was strikingly reminiscent of Kevin's words when he first met Ellie. This coincidence, paired with his mother's advice about empathy, brought a chuckle to Kevin's lips. After dating Jessica for over 6 months, she posed a question he hadn't anticipated. "So, when do I get to meet Sophia?" Kevin was taken aback. He hadn't considered how Sophia would feel about him dating again. Sophia's reaction to the news was far from positive. She felt a profound sense of betrayal, not just towards Kevin, but also towards the memory of her mother. To Sophia, it felt like Kevin was trying to replace Ellie, and she wasn't ready to accept that. Kevin found himself in a challenging situation, one he hadn't anticipated. In hindsight, he wished he had eased Sophia into the idea more gradually, maybe setting up a casual meeting with Jessica or mentioning her initially as just a friend. However, what's done was done, and now he faced the repercussions. Neither Kevin nor Jessica had realized the delicate intricacies of introducing a new figure into Sophia's life after Ellie. After days of receiving a cold reception from Sophia, she reluctantly agreed to meet Jessica. As the moment approached, Sophia's emotions bubbled up. Her eyes glistened with tears, and a lump formed in her throat. "Do I have to call her mom now?" Sophia uttered, her voice quivering with emotion. Kevin, sensing his daughter's turmoil, replied gently, "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with." He brushed her hair softly and continued, "I just hope you give her a chance, Soph. You've always been wise beyond your years, right?" Overwhelmed, Sophia couldn't contain her tears any longer and dashed into her room. A few days passed, and the day of the introduction came. Jessica, with her short brunette hair, walked into the living room. "Sophia," Kevin began, "this is Jessica, the person I told you about." With a sincere smile, Jessica extended her hand, saying, "Hi, Sophia. Kevin's told me so much about you. You can just call me Jessica." Sophia's response was curt. "I need to finish my homework," she said, evading Jessica's friendly gesture. As she made her way to her room, she overheard Jessica's empathetic comment to Kevin. "It's okay. It's new for all of us. We all need time." Jessica's tone remained steady, even in the face of Sophia's chilly reception. That night, Kevin entered Sophia's room, his expression serious. "Sophia, acting this way isn't helping anyone. Jessica genuinely wants to get to know you. She even offered to help with your homework." "I don't need her help," Sophia mumbled, looking away. The next morning, as she finished her breakfast, Sophia stood up, intending to leave without clearing her plate. "Aren't you forgetting something?" Kevin asked, nodding towards the unwashed dishes. "We have a new lady in the house. Let her take care of it," Sophia said cheekily, not meeting Jessica's eyes. "No worries, Kevin. I've got it," Jessica replied, gracefully sidestepping the tension. Kevin hoped for Jessica to become a more permanent presence in their home, but Jessica hesitated, feeling it might complicate things further for Sophia. Months later, though, Sophia seemed more open to the idea, suggesting that Kevin could invite Jessica over. One crisp autumn weekend, Jessica tentatively knocked on Sophia's door. "Sophia," she began, "your dad and I thought it'd be nice to walk in the park. The fall colors are just beautiful. Would you want to come with us?" Sophia was curt in her response. "Just go without me. I don't want to go. Please, leave," she added, turning her back to Jessica. "All right, maybe some other time," Jessica replied gently, leaving the room. Moments later, Sophia could hear her father's raised voice. "Enough is enough. She has to come with us. I'm tired of her acting out." Jessica, however, intervened, her tone calm, yet firm. "Kevin, forcing her isn't the answer. We need to be patient. Pushing too hard now might create even more distance between you two. Let's give her time." Sophia's routine had become clear. A swift exit to her room after meals, minimal conversation, and a palpable air of resentment, especially towards Jessica. It was a month into this silent rebellion when Jessica mentioned their upcoming Friday plans. "Sophia, Kevin, and I will be out on Friday evening for a friend's birthday," she said, trying to maintain a neutral tone. Sophia's next question took Jessica by surprise. "What will you be wearing?" Pleased that Sophia was showing interest, Jessica enthusiastically opened her closet to display the elegant evening dress she had picked out. "Do you like it?" she asked with a hopeful glint in her eye. Sophia shrugged. "It's okay." The following day, a shock awaited Jessica. Her beautiful dress lay shredded on her bed, rendering it completely unwearable. Kevin's face reddened with anger when he saw the ruined fabric. "What on earth does she think she's doing?" he exclaimed, his voice raising with every word. Before he could continue his tirade, Jessica, ever the voice of reason, interrupted. "Kevin, let's talk to Sophia first. Understand her reasons before we jump to conclusions." "She's just trying to ruin our evening, Jess. It's evident she can't stand you being around." Kevin's frustration was evident. Jessica took a deep breath. She is still grappling with the loss of her mother, and seeing her dad with someone else is hard. We can't forget that she's just a kid. I'll wear something else to the party. Although, she added with a slight sigh, I did love that dress. Jessica's unexpected defense stunned Sophia. She had hoped Jessica would retaliate, maybe even leave for good. Seeing them share happy moments was a constant reminder of her mother's absence. So every time laughter or the sounds of their shared conversations reached her ears, she would retreat to her sanctuary and cocoon herself in silence. Whenever Kevin found himself alone with his thoughts, doubt and frustration began to cloud his judgment. He felt cornered by Sophia's behavior, believing she was deliberately trying to manipulate him and stop him from moving on with his life. One particularly difficult day, in a moment of exasperation, he threatened to send her to a boarding school if her behavior didn't change. Jessica was stunned when she heard about Kevin's ultimatum. "I get that she isn't your biological daughter," she began cautiously, "but you've been her father figure ever since she was tiny. How can you even think of pushing her away? She might not have warmed up to me, but you're the only father she's ever known." That very day, Sophia decided to skip school. Retreating to her room, she was consumed by thoughts of the happy times she had shared with her father. They had been close, with Kevin teaching her to swim, introducing her to the game of chess, and sharing countless other precious moments. Now, it felt like he was ready to cast her aside. She blamed Jessica for this growing rift between them. Locked in her room without food or company, Sophia's health began to wane. By evening, as she tried to leave her room, her vision started to blur. Moments later, she found herself collapsing, and darkness took over. When she woke up, she was in her bed, with Jessica's concerned face hovering over her. "Sophia, you gave us quite the scare," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling with concern. "You just collapsed in the hallway. We had to call for medical help. The doctor said it might have been because of excessive stress." Sophia, still feeling weak and disoriented, simply turned her head away, wanting to avoid any conversation. Jessica gently rearranged the cool cloth on Sophia's forehead. "Try to rest," she whispered, leaving the room. "We can talk when you're up for it." The morning sun was still in its infancy, casting a pale light into Sophia's room. She was still weak and was advised to take the day off from school. Jessica, ever concerned, decided it was best for Sophia to see a doctor. The young girl heard Jessica on the phone, making an appointment for her. "Do I really need to see a doctor?" Sophia asked, her voice wavering with a hint of nervousness. "Look, Sophia," Jessica said gently, "I've noticed you've been looking a bit pale lately, and you tire easily. Plus, after what happened yesterday, it's best to make sure everything is okay." Sophia, not really knowing how to respond, just looked away, her thoughts miles away from the room. The doctor's office was filled with a strange silence after the initial consultation. "We'll need to run some tests before drawing any conclusions," the doctor advised. "Please get these done as soon as possible." Once the results were in, they found themselves back in the cold, sterile environment of the clinic. The atmosphere was tense. The doctor, with a heavy sigh, asked Jessica and Sophia to leave the room, indicating that he wanted to talk to Kevin alone. Once they were alone, the doctor delivered the devastating news. "I'm afraid Sophia has been diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the same type her mother had." Kevin felt a rush of emotions. Shock, despair, and guilt engulfed him. All he could think of was Sophia and how he was about to lose another loved one. He clenched his fists, trying to stay composed. "What do we do now?" he managed to ask. The doctor explained the severity of the situation. "Sophia is at a stage where the disease can progress rapidly. A bone marrow transplant is critical, and the sooner we find a donor, the better." Kevin's mind raced as he processed the dire situation. Sophia's rare blood type, AB negative, made finding a donor even more daunting. Time was not on their side. "Your best chance is to test if either of you is a match," the doctor suggested. Kevin nodded, a fierce determination growing within him. He would do whatever it took to save his daughter. Kevin's heart pounded heavily as he clutched the doctor's table, trying to absorb the grim news. Memories of his wife Ellie flooded back. "Sophia's mother died of the same disease," he muttered, pain evident in his voice. "Did Sophia inherit this from her?" The doctor, showing a mix of sympathy and urgency, asked, "Kevin, what's your blood type? Every moment counts now." "I am O positive," Kevin replied with a heavy sigh. The doctor's next words further intensified Kevin's fears. "Finding a matching blood type is just a beginning. Convincing someone to become a bone marrow donor isn't easy. Many are reluctant due to the perceived risks." Amidst the whirlwind of conversations, Sophia, even though young, could sense the gravity of the situation. She mistakenly correlated her ailment to Jessica's arrival in their lives. That evening, overwhelmed with emotion, Sophia confronted Kevin. "If Jessica never came into our lives, I wouldn't be sick," she cried bitterly. Devastated, Kevin felt lost. His world seemed to crumble once more. As he stepped into the hallway, he saw Jessica. Their eyes met, and her face reflected the pain she felt, having overheard Sophia's words. "I'm so sorry, Jess," Kevin murmured, regret evident in his eyes. "I think it's best if we take a step back for now." Jessica nodded, pain evident in her eyes. "I understand, Kevin. You need to do what's best for Sophia right now." She quietly began packing her bags, leaving a heartbroken Kevin behind. The following day was a blur for Kevin, as his hours were consumed with anxious phone calls and discussions in his desperate quest for a donor. During his mid-afternoon break, Dr. Denis was chatting with his colleagues when Jessica stormed into his office. "Doctor, I have AB-negative blood. I want to be a donor for Sophia." Taken aback, Dr. Denis responded, "But you aren't related by blood, right?" "No, I'm not," Jessica replied urgently. "But if there is a chance I can help Sophia, why does that matter?" Pondering for a moment, Dr. Denis nodded. "You're right, every moment counts. But where are Kevin and Sophia? They should be here." Jessica quickly filled the doctor in on the recent events and their strained relationship. She pleaded with him to keep her identity as the potential donor a secret, suggesting he tell Kevin they found a donor just in time. "All right," Dr. Denis agreed. "First things first, though, you need to gather your essentials and I'll kickstart the hospital admission process. We'll have to do a thorough check to ensure you're a fit donor." Later, when Kevin received the news of a found donor from Dr. Denis, relief washed over him. He turned to Sophia, squeezing her hand gently. "Everything's gonna be all right, Sophia. I'll be with you every step of the way. Don't be afraid." As the medical tests confirmed Jessica's compatibility, Dr. Denis shared the news with her, admiration clear in his eyes. "Jessica, your selflessness is remarkable. Despite the risks, you're stepping up for Sophia, as if she were your own. I've been in this profession for 2 decades, and your act stands out." Jessica simply nodded, emotion welling up in her eyes. "All that matters is that Sophia gets a chance at life," she murmured. On the drive to the hospital, Kevin's mind swirled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. He sent up silent prayers, fervently hoping that everything would go smoothly for Sophia. Sophia's procedure was a success. For Jessica, the process was more intensive. Doctors harvested bone marrow from her under anesthesia. When Jessica awoke, her vision was hazy. The bright, sterile environment of the hospital room momentarily confused her. As the fog of anesthesia lifted, memories of her selfless act surfaced. A kindly nurse, seeing her stir, approached her bed. "How do you feel?" the nurse inquired, her tone soothing. Jessica's mouth felt dry, and words seemed to evade her for a moment. "A bit dazed, I guess?" She finally managed her voice faint. "You're in the ICU for now, just so the doctors can monitor your recovery," the nurse said, offering a comforting smile. "But the good news is, the procedure went off without a hitch. We don't anticipate any complications." Kevin's heart was lighter knowing the transplant had gone well. While the road ahead was long, with Sophia requiring close medical supervision, there was a renewed hope in his heart. The next day, as morning sunlight streamed into the hospital corridors, Jessica was transferred from the ICU to a regular room where she would recover for the next week. Kevin spent the morning at Sophia's side, chatting, consoling, and ensuring she had everything she needed. As he stepped into the hallway for a moment of respite, he took a deep, steadying breath and decided to update Jessica on the recent developments. Unaware that she was the donor, he believed she would be thrilled to hear that they had found a donor and successfully completed the transplant. Kevin paused, taking a moment to gather himself, as he slowly wandered down the hospital hallway, still trying to process what had just happened. He was on his way to update Jessica about Sophia when a nurse briskly walked by, clutching a set of clothes and a ringing cell phone. Kevin's eyes darted to the phone case. It was unmistakably Jessica's. He watched the nurse intently as she made her way to a room further down. As the realization washed over him, Kevin's steps quickened. Before he could enter the room, however, he was intercepted by a doctor. "Sir, you can't go in there," the doctor stated firmly. "That phone, it's Jessica's. What happened to her?" Kevin's voice was filled with panic. The doctor tried to calm him down. "She's okay. She was here as a bone marrow donor." A weight seemed to lift off Kevin's chest, replaced by astonishment. Jessica had been their saving grace and chose to keep it a secret. 2 weeks later, Sophia was back home, surrounded by the love and care of her father. The house echoed with her laughter once again. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Kevin wrapped her in a warm embrace, assuring her that the worst was over. Sophia looked up, her eyes glistening with tears. "Dad, I'm so sorry for the hurtful things I said. You've been amazing throughout all of this." Kevin gently held her face and said, "It's okay, sweetheart, but there's something you need to know." Seeing the solemnity in his eyes, Sophia braced herself. "Do you remember when we got the news about the donor?" Kevin began. Sophia nodded slowly. "That donor didn't just come out of the blue. It was Jessica. She came forward to save you." Kevin's voice quivered with emotion. Sophia's eyes widened in shock, her previous feelings of animosity replaced by deep gratitude. "She did that for me?" Kevin nodded, wiping away his tears. "She wanted it to remain a secret, but she needed to know. Jessica cares about us, especially you." In that moment, Sophia's heart overflowed with newfound appreciation for Jessica's selfless act. The realization forever changed the dynamics of their relationship. Sophia blinked back the tears, her emotions swirling. She remembered Jessica's infectious laughter, her bright hazel eyes that always held warmth. She had often found herself irritated by Jessica's unwavering kindness, mistaking it for insincerity. Yet now, realizing the depth of Jessica's genuine care, Sophia felt a pang of guilt and gratitude. "Dad," she whispered, looking up at Kevin, "can we go see her? I need to apologize." Kevin nodded, understanding the importance of this moment. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's go." They made their way to the hospital the next day, armed with a beautiful bouquet of daisies, Sophia's idea to symbolize new beginnings. Entering Jessica's room, they found her reclined on the bed, reading a magazine. She looked up and smiled, but the surprise was evident in her eyes. Sophia approached slowly, clutching the bouquet tightly. "Mama Jessica?" she began hesitantly, her voice wavering. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong about you. I promised to be better." Jessica gently touched Sophia's cheek, wiping away a tear. "It's okay, sweetheart. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them." Sophia took a deep breath, her voice firmer now. "I have another wish. I hope you and Dad can have another baby. I'd love to have a little sibling to care for." Jessica's laughter filled the room, lightening the mood. "Let's focus on getting you better first," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Then we'll see about making your wish come true." Sophia's transition to homeschooling had its challenges, but with Jessica's unwavering support and patience, they developed a comfortable rhythm. The virtual lessons were convenient and flexible, but Sophia yearned for the lively chatter and the camaraderie of her classmates. Still, she knew that her health came first, and she made the best of the situation. Over time, her resilience and adaptability paid off. When the day came for her to return to traditional school, she was both excited and a little nervous. Throughout Sophia's recovery journey, Jessica remained her pillar of strength, attending to her needs and ensuring she received the best medical care. Every doctor's visit brought them more hope and confidence as Sophia continued to show signs of robust health. The joy of welcoming baby Sonia was immense. Her tiny cries, infectious giggles, and heartwarming coos added a new layer of happiness to their lives. Sophia, ever the caring sister, often took the lead, assisting Jessica with feeding and bathing routines. Their shared moments, from reading bedtime stories to singing lullabies, only strengthened the bond between them. One day, while Jessica was busy with Sonia, she couldn't help but eavesdrop on Sophia's animated phone conversation. When she recognized the topic of discussion and heard Sophia's heartfelt defense, emotions welled up inside her. The realization that Sophia considered her not just a mother figure, but her real mother, was overwhelmingly touching. Wiping away a tear, Jessica felt a warmth envelop her. Holding Sonia close, she whispered, "We are a family, complete and unbreakable." The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, casting a golden glow on everything it touched. Jessica drove to the cemetery with a bouquet of fresh wildflowers, Ellie's favorite. Walking slowly, she approached Ellie's resting place. The headstone was simple, engraved with her name and the words, "Loving wife and mother, forever in our hearts." Gently placing the flowers on the grave, Jessica sat down on the soft grass. Taking a deep breath, she said, You left behind a beautiful family, and I want you to know that they are safe, loved, and happy. Sophia is turning into such a wonderful, strong young woman, and she has your spirit. She has your resilience and grace. We welcomed little Sonia into our family. She's brought so much joy to all of us." A gentle breeze blew, rustling the leaves and making the flowers sway, as if the world around Jessica was responding to her heartfelt words. Tears welled in her eyes, a mix of sadness, gratitude, and resolve. "Thank you, Ellie," Jessica whispered, her voice choked with emotion, "for bringing us all together. I promise to honor your memory every day by taking care of the family you so dearly loved." As Jessica stood up, she felt the warmth enveloping her, as if she wasn't alone, as if Ellie was right there with her, silently acknowledging and comforting her. With one last glance at the grave, Jessica walked away, her heart filled with a sense of peace and determination.